Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 2021 Vancouver Taiwanese Film Festival. I'm Ian, your host for tonight's event. Before we begin tonight's panel, we would like to first acknowledge that the Vancouver Taiwanese Film Festival operates on the traditional and unceded Coast Salish territories, which is the ancestral land for many indigenous people in the Lower Mainland. With this acknowledgement, we thank the indigenous community who still live and care for this land. That being said, tonight's event is called Our Future Together. It's an in-depth discussion panel for the documentary The Good Daughter. As we know, both Canada and Taiwan enjoy a relatively high level standard of living, and that attracts many newcomers who are seeking a better life. As an important part of our society, what kind of challenge do these newcomers face? We invite you to join us and listen to these hidden stories. Tonight, we will open the panel with a 40 minutes discussion, followed by a 20 minutes QA session. We encourage you to leave your question in the comment section below. Our guests will try to answer them during tonight's event. Now let's welcome tonight's guest. We have Director Sally Wu and Jennifer Ying. Director Wu, could you kindly introduce yourself and your film to our audience, please?
Hi everyone in Canada. I'm Sally Wu and I'm the director of The Good Daughter, and I'm very glad to share my film with you. And I'm right now in Boston, so 10 o'clock at night right now, and I'm looking forward to have more discussion with you. Oh, and okay, so I want to introduce my film if you haven't watched it. The Good Daughter is about a family in Taiwan. It's a very intimate portrait of the family. That's the family is composed of a Vietnamese foreign bride who came to Taiwan through this commercial matchmaking junket. And she married her husband, who is a disabled garlic farmer in Taiwan. And this film looked very closely at this family, at their relationship, and also each of their family that's impacting their lives. And so it's a portrait film.
Thank you, Director Wu. Jennifer, could you kindly introduce yourself and also your organization, MOSAIC, to our audience, please?
Hey, thank you, Ian. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Jennifer. I'm the manager of MOSAIC's Migrant Workers Program. MOSAIC is one of the nonprofit settlement agencies right here in Vancouver, BC. And we provide services to and support to newcomers that come to Canada. We provide settlement services, employment services, as well as language services. So in the Migrant Workers Program here, we provide support specifically to migrant workers. And we're also the project lead for the Community Capacity Building Project, which is funded by the Government of Canada's Migrant Workers Support Network. This project is a collaboration between MOSAIC and 22 partner agencies across BC, all working towards enhancing support for migrant workers in BC. Thank you for having us here today, Ian.
Thank you, Jennifer. Now let's begin by looking behind the scenes of the film first. Director Wu, I'm wondering, how did you come across this topic? And especially, how did you meet Azi, the protagonist of your film? What was your first impression of her?
So I wasn't out to make actually a film about immigrants in the beginning. I was more interested in just going to a corner in Taiwan that's less, seen and less portrayed in, films, in all kinds of media. And I just want to go there to to find a subject and look at their life. And I started looking in this area called Yunlin, and I realized there's a very high rate of single father in that area, single fathers. And when I dig into this phenomenon, I realized it's because there are a lot of these transnation marriages through matchmaking, commercial matchmaking junket. And that's when I shift my focus to maybe finding a family, and then immigrants issues comes in. And how I met Azi, so I contacted a lot of the NGO organization in the area, who's helping the immigrants, helping them finding work or getting adapted to the society. I mean, there are quite a lot of these organizations, even in just because the how many just amazing amount of this kind of marriages in the area. So it's good to to know there are a lot of people trying to help these immigrants. And I think so. Yeah, how I met her is one of the organization helped me get in touch with this Vietnamese woman. She owns like a family, like a very simple family salon. She just has like one chair, like that's for doing hair. And I remember it's bare. It's a bare room, and I remember her baby back then was about one year old. Was in a hammock while she was doing hair. And at that time there's a lot of neighbor Vietnamese women who came to just, it's almost like a gathering place. So I was sort of just hanging around in her house, in her place, and chatting with all these women and hearing their story, listening to their stories, and just snacking with them and chatting. And then one day Atsu came in. I remember it was around 3 or 4 o'clock, and she was just came in with this bright smile. And I asked her, what did she do? And she said, oh, I just came from my work. And what did she do? She was just harvesting oysters. She started working the night before, like from 4 o'clock till 2 o'clock the next day. And she harvested 30 baskets, just her and her boss alone, the two of them. They harvested 30 baskets of oyster. And I know what that looks like. And I know how heavy they are. And it was amazing to me that she didn't seem tired. She didn't seem like told, she was just so happy to see her friends, so happy to be chatting and laughing. Her laughter was just so bright and just, and I got attracted to her. And that's when I started to, she took me to meet her husband. And when I first met her husband, actually, I was scared of him. He has a look that makes me, he is that, don't get too close to me, that kind of look. You don't know what I am capable of. But actually, once I, talked to him, he just has an incredible, gentle mind and heart. And I just fell in love with both of them. Yeah.
Wow. A very good impression, I guess. So speaking of impression, I have a question for Jennifer. What's the most impressive part of the film for you? Are there any scenes in the film that remind you of any of your experience working in Vancouver with, like you said, migrant workers? Maybe could you share some story with us, like how maybe there's some similarity between the story in the film and maybe in Vancouver?
Absolutely. Thank you, Ian. And thank you for sharing that journey with us, Sally. You mentioned that spirit that Aja has. And I actually wanted to comment on that, that's one of the things I loved most about the film, is that you were able to really capture her lively spirit and also her resilient spirit. Just everything that she has had to go through in Taiwan, but also having to have that pressure of supporting her family. I think that's a lot for any one person to go through, but she always, every scene we see her with that bright, energetic smile, that bright, energetic spirit. So that was really interesting to see. I really enjoyed that. But I also, I guess to tie into that, an impressive part of the movie, I think, was how beautifully you were able to capture that human connection. And I mean that specifically between Adze and her families, both in Vietnam and Taiwan. So I will admit that before I watching this film, I had no idea what to expect. I only knew that it's a film about migrant workers. But when I heard that it was about foreign brides, I kind of went in with the preconceived notions about what I thought an arranged marriage was going to be like, expecting that maybe there's a strained relationship between Adze and her husband. But in fact, throughout the film, I saw many intimate gestures between her and her husband. Things like just sending money back to Adze's family, them chatting and laughing together, them discussing their day-to-day work. It really seemed like a true partnership between the two of them, with both Adze and her husband taking each other into consideration every step of the way. So that was really, really unique to see. And I love that really broke down my preconceived notions. And I'm like, okay, so arranged marriages is not all negative. There is some light there. So I really enjoyed seeing that. So thank you for capturing it so beautifully. Now, to parallel the experiences with migrant workers here in Vancouver, I do want to say that I see a lot of what Adze goes through in the workers that we support here in Vancouver. Things like feeling isolated, missing family, because they are here for long periods of time, months or years away from their family. So of course, there's that element of missing family. And of course, that element of working abroad so that they can send money back to their family. That is very much prevalent in our migrant workers here as well. But also, again, to talk about that human connection, we do see a lot of our workers here finding connections here in Canada as well. So that can be through nonprofit agencies like MOSAIC. A lot of times it's with church ministries. A lot of Latin church ministries, Filipino church ministries, they're all very active in bringing together the workers and creating those kind of atmospheres of celebration, atmospheres of just joint discussion, sharing, so that they have a safe and open space to discuss what they're going through, the challenges and also the joys that they go through. So I think just that human connection piece is very key to everybody, but I see that parallel between our workers and Adze in the film.
Thank you, Jennifer. Director Wu, your film is very realistic. I would like to know how you managed to capture these moments in your film. Like, I believe you look like you built a very strong relationship with Adze's family. How did you manage to do that?
I think the key to be able to connect with them is basically to be on the same, position, meaning to make sure to them not here to play any role of judgment or expose or anything. I'm just here to observe and to portray your life as truly as I can. And I think, and that's truly how I feel. I mean, a lot of, their strength, like Jennifer said, I mean, the obstacles they go through, I probably can't go through it myself. And I'm always very honest with them. I mean, I'm very humble, to be able to film them, because I think they just have great capacity that, I probably don't have. And And I think they feel that in a way, because I always stress that, you know, what they are going through, what they are doing for their own family, it's amazing to me. So I think that's just how I'm very honest with them about that. And also, like Jennifer said about, you know, being arts, you know, she doesn't really have that many friends there. And like you, Jennifer said, like being lonely and having someone to listen to her, the human connection is really, really important for her. And it's, and not just listen, you know, not just as a outsider or as someone who is trying to help, but as just as a friend and as someone who can, and I say that to all of them, you know, I'm not, and that's why I was able to capture also her husband and her mother-in-law is I'm there to listen, not to judge. Yeah.
Thank you, Director Wu. So I'm guessing, in a way, you build a very strong relationship through honesty and trust. So there's a mutual trust between you and Azi and her family. Since we are talking about trust, Jennifer, could you also share how you, as a staff working at MOSAIC, build trust with your clients, especially the migrant workers that you encounter on your in your daily life? And then based on your experience in Vancouver, can you also give us an overview of the migrant workers in Vancouver? Like geologically, where do they come from? And then what job and trades do they working? And also what challenge do they encounter here in Canada?
Great, thank you, Ian. Yes, I can definitely share our experiences here. Before I do that, though, I wonder if I may ask Director Sally a question based on what she has just mentioned about building trust, or should I leave that to the end, which I can do as well?
Oh, definitely, go ahead. You feel free to ask any questions.
Okay, so Director Wu, I just wanted to ask because it's very interesting when you mentioned the mother-in-law. She and I believe the brother-in-law, I remember there were scenes where they made very bold statements. So I wonder, how was that relationship building with them in terms of, did they know, I assume that they would have known that they were being filmed and everything, but did they have a problem with being filmed in that kind of atmosphere?
If they don't want to be filmed, they tell me they don't want to be filmed. So and I always, you know, if they if they tell me this is to turn off the camera, I will turn off the camera. So yeah, so if they let me film, then it's okay. So and I think I was back and forth to visit and to film for quite a while, and they sort of got used to the camera being there, and they sort of, because I ask questions and I chat with them, you know, like I would be gone, I would come back to the States for a few months, and then I go back there, I would chat with them about life, about work, about their harvest, and they know, you know, the questions I ask, they know, you know, I'm not trying to make them look anything they are not. So I guess, you know, it's they've gotten just very comfortable being me, you know, with the camera there, you know, with I mean, with a very small crew, so they just got very used to it. Yeah.
Great. Oh, that's really cool to see that you're really be able to capture that authenticity among everybody. That was really, I love seeing that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I guess to answer your question, Ian, about how we build trust. So I would say first and foremost that speaking the same language helps. So we have migrant workers coming from all over, from the Philippines, from Mexico, Guatemala, Jamaica, India. Vietnam, Thailand. So having those language capacities when we're helping the workers really definitely already start that relationship building. However, of course, it takes more than just speaking the same language. So we also do things like have a lot of socio-recreational activities, celebrations, so things that are just fun, because migrant workers come to work, they've already done enough work, they don't need to come off work and learn and be taking classes and things. So we, of course, we do workshops and info sessions for their benefit, but at the same time, we also want to make sure that we inject some fun into their day-to-day. And so I think, again, echoing that point about human connection, I feel like those kind of fun activities we are able to build trust by building first on that human connection piece. We also have some of our agencies that we partner with also have something called peer navigators. So what that is really just long-term migrant workers who have been here season to season, and they've come back and forth many times. They're already seasoned workers. So they act as guides for our newer workers, the newbies. So that has really helped, because who knows more what a migrant worker goes through than a migrant worker themselves. So that itself has really helped build that trust piece, and the word of mouth from previous former migrant workers that have come to us for support, that goes down the line to newer migrant workers, and they then know who to come to for support as well. And so I guess also to speak to, so I've already mentioned the countries and the places that our migrant workers come from. They also come, in terms of industries and why they come to Canada, most of them come for agriculture, caregiving, hospitality, construction, food industry. So a wide variety of industries really that we cover. And just speaking of our program, I want to make a note that we work primarily with workers that have closed work permits, which means that they are attached to a specific employer. So this does lead to a lot of unique challenges. For example, if you are attached to a specific employer, workers are a bit more vulnerable in a sense that they can be abused or exploited by employers because they don't know their rights as workers. They don't have the language to be able to advocate for themselves. Language barriers is another huge issue. And then in our programs, we always have English conversation circles to be able to combat that. We also help workers understand their rights. So that's where the info sessions come from. Also, we see a lot of farm workers specifically having limited freedom of mobility. So meaning that if they work in more remote areas, that's just harder to get around. So without more regular transportation, a lot of our agencies have delivered bicycles to those kind of locations so that they have that additional mobility. However, during COVID times, it was also another tricky thing because a lot of employers restricted movement, not only of the workers, not letting them off the farm, but they also restricted support agencies like ourselves going into farms to give extra support. I guess it's a safety issue, it's a health issue, but it's also employers sometimes aren't aware of what we are coming in to do. They might think that we're government coming in to affect some sort of regulations, which we're not. So those were the tricky pieces during COVID as well. And I would say also that we hear a lot from our agencies up in the interior BC that racism is quite prevalent. I think racism is everywhere, but I think it's especially prevalent in smaller towns up in the interior.
Can I ask you about the racism issue there? Because I think you're right, racism is everywhere. I'm just curious, because even here in Boston, I see a lot of migrant workers, and they come, like you say, in remote areas. I remember there's this fair I once went to, in some, Massachusetts, a very rural area, and the fair, that people who's operating all the rides and the machines looks like all migrant workers. And it's just amazing to me that they're so secluded from, the community or just they and the expression on their face, up to this day I can still remember. It's just so gloomy. It's most people don't know, these are, maybe they are, like, they will probably, a lot of them think they're illegal, or I don't know what they think. And I know actually in the States, a lot of the migrant workers, a lot of them also pay Social Security here, pay taxes here. And so how do you help these migrant workers to integrate? Or, is that hard? I could see how hard it's hard, because, there's a lot of cultural barriers, a lot of language barriers, there's a lot of economic barriers there. But do you see any hope of any of that getting solved?
So let's it is a huge issue, and I feel like I have to give kudos to our partner agencies up in the interior, because what I've been seeing and hearing about is that they do a lot of workshops and a lot of outreach into the community. And the workshops are meant specifically, not so much workshops, I guess, let's call them sharing spaces for workers to bring up their issues, so that it's like a safe space for workers to really address what they come across in the community and what they see, what they hear, all of that. And of course, in their own language, so that they can fully express themselves. And then on the community side, we see that these agencies, our partner agencies, are also making strides to have community dialogues as well. Because as you mentioned, Sally, that there are a lot of maybe misconceptions of what a migrant worker is. A lot of people thinking maybe they're undocumented. Why are they here? All of these kind of antagonistic thoughts. And really, that's not the case. Like they have migrant workers here in Canada have come through a program. They have come through a government program, a government sanctioned program. So they have gone through those steps. They also pay taxes. They absolutely do all of that. So I think it's just a matter of, I won't say that all racism comes from ignorance, but to a degree, I think it does. And that I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean that in a very neutral way of ignorance, meaning that somebody just hasn't been made aware. So I think those community dialogues are really helpful in that sense. That being said, I guess I have to give props to our partner agencies for making those strides. And also we have had agencies that do podcasts. So again, that's actually, the podcast brings together the community as well as the workers in one space. So that was really cool to see. And we saw that a lot happening specifically in the interior. In Vancouver itself, in the Lower Mainland, not to say that it doesn't exist, but it's not as prevalent an issue. So I don't see us having as many of those kind of dialogues necessarily, but we do have things like the social recreational activities to just integrate workers into society a little bit more, and also just the English classes that helps empower them, because they can at least advocate for themselves, they can communicate for themselves in the community. Yeah.
Thank you. That sounds great. Yeah, no, I think you guys are doing a great job, great work.
Thank you, Sally.
It's a lot of a lot of work, and you're right. I mean, ignorance is the main issue, but most of it is really people just don't have the chance, to get to know them more, and to share these basic human experiences.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow, I learned a bit more, and then because I used to work in the construction industry somewhere remote, so like up north in the mine. So we have a lot of foreign workers that, because the labor is cheaper, so some labor companies hire them a lot of them to just go there and work. But sometimes we feel like even people that, like, we have found different companies, but just on the sideline, when we look at it, we feel like they are just basically getting shipped overseas to place, and then the company just drops them in the middle of nowhere and then didn't give them any instruction. Maybe a little bit of like tools, and then just there. And then sometimes the language barrier, it's not helping the case, but also different countries have like different safety regulation, and then it's not their fault they want to violate some of the safety regulation and stuff, but it just wasn't their supervisor didn't communicate, or they were not able to communicate with those former workers. So the workers, they couldn't like follow the safety rules, and then they got fired for it. When we look at it, we feel like they were just it wasn't fair for them. So yeah, now I understand a bit more, and then I know that if they need support, I know where they can find support. So thank you for sharing these very good information and stories. So since we were talking about minorities, I kind of want to ask Director Wu regarding another minority in her film. You mentioned Along. When your first impression of him, he's kind of scary, not easy to talk to. But as we, spoiler alert for audience who haven't watched the film, we found out that he is, first of all, he lost his job because of a shift in the garment industry in Taiwan. And also he has polio, which causes basically mobility-wise, it's not ideal for him. So he couldn't do a lot of job that requires him to move around that much. And then I guess my question for Director Wu is, from your observation, like, could you share with us how Taiwan's economic growth has an impact on the family in this particular film?
So where Along is from, Yunlin is agricultural area, is a province that's 90% of the industry is agriculture and fishing. So there's not that many other industries, and so he has for him to to be out of the only to be, because he can't really do much farming because of his disability, and he learned to sew and learned to make men's suits, garments, and in the garment industry. And around 1970s, I guess it's when the whole globalization and industrialization machine replaced people like him. It's sort of like today we're talking about robots replacing workers, right? It's or all kinds of different machines replacing workers everywhere, and then this globalization of other countries, because of this machine, it's the market has the strong need for mass producing, right? So it's the globalization. So it's sort of Taiwan does thrive through 70s, 80s, 90s, through this industrialization, through this globalization. So he's sort of the underdog who's sort of neglected with this wave. When you can't catch the wave, you're sort of left behind. And yeah, that's how it impacted people like him.
Thank you, Director. So economy definitely has a very big impact on all of us. And then sometimes we can tell the economy changes due to certain events that's happening around us. For example, right now we have COVID. That's having an impact on our economy as well. So in other cases, for example, like Vietnam, they had a civil war during early, okay, I don't know the time, but yeah, they had a civil war. So on a larger scale, the economic disparity between Vietnam and other neighboring countries, as well as the middle, the right, are all related to basically, like I mentioned, the Vietnam War. Would you like to share how this economic situation has affected people in Vietnam, their life choices, and how, like, based on your observation from your film, like I know in your documentary, you actually went to Vietnam with arts, so you had your first-hand observation, and you also got a chance to interview her father who fought in the war. So could you share a little bit of your thought on this particular aspect of the issue?
So when I was researching about the impact of the war to the modern Vietnam right now, because the war happened during the 70s, so that was at least 30 years ago. But when the Americans left, they pulled out a lot of their resources, and Vietnam was cut off from a lot of the Western countries' support because, you know, they are now a communist, they became an official communist country. So they were cut off a lot of the Western aid to rebuild the country. And I think, so under the, you know, the military government, when the North Vietnam won, the government, the communists, they've been through a horrible war, and the whole country was, well, they spent a while trying to reunite the two countries, right? Like her father said, he was in the concentration camp because he fought with the American. So the countries were, you know, divided, and they had to do some work, right, to make sure there's no everybody's clean slate, I guess. So there's this concentration camp. And also the government, from my research, I knew that the government is military, is very focused on a few people, the power, and they do, you know, control most of the resources, the economic power, and so there's, you know, they were cut off from the Western aid. It was the military government who probably think more about themselves than about the regular people, the regular citizens. But over time, I think in the 1990s, they started to get more aid and help. So I remember her father told me, you know, life is really much better than, you know, right after the war. I mean, you can't imagine the area when we were there. I mean, there's, you know, straight, big highway to the village. And that wasn't there until maybe 10 years ago. And I think, you know, they're starting to have like Japanese money coming in to help them rebuild. And then, you know, the Chinese are coming in to set up factories there. But you probably heard some stories about in Southeast Asia, there's this anti-Chinese sentiment. that, you know, they don't like to work in their factories because they weren't treated decently, and they use the worst like chemicals, you know, and that damages their body, and they like just their basic human rights were not respected by the Chinese company. And so in the countryside, so they are in South Vietnam, and they are, you know, about 5 hours away from Ho Chi Minh City. So the more south you go in Vietnam, the poorer they are. And a lot of the resources, you know, are in the big cities. You know, the road is better, just the city's development is better. But most of the countryside, like I remember Az's sister, one of her sister, she wasn't in the film, but she lives in an area that there's no road to get to. We have to get there by the boat, by the motorboat on the river. And her son, that's how he could go to school, is every day they have to take the boat to go to a school. There's just no, they can't even like ride a bike. There's just no like clear path for them to go to school. And that's how, you know, the situation still are in some area. I mean, that's just about half away from their village, half an hour away from their village. We have to take the boat to her sister's house. Yeah. So I guess, you know, the country and the city's development is extremely uneven, and also just most of the money is still, you know, in certain, it is still limited to a very small group of people in that country. That's as far as I know. Yeah.
Thank you, Director Wu, for sharing. So I guess right now is a very good time to open the floor for audience question. We already have a couple of questions coming in. One of them is for Director Wu. How long did it take for you to make the film, including editing and, well, including planning, filming, and then editing, and then finally be able to present the film in theater and also festivals?
So it took me about four years from the research to filming to editing, because I was editing while I was filming too. So yeah, about 4 years total. And I can't say it, maybe it's, I should say, I started, the film was out in 2019, and I started researching in 2014, but I had to take a year off because I was pregnant and I had a baby, and I had to take about 8 months off. So yeah, so it's about 4 years to finish the film. Yeah.
Thank you, Director Wu. The next question is also for Director Wu. This person wants to know, were there any things that could not be included for various reasons? Like, could you share some of them with us today? And why were they not included in the film?
I did film some scenes with, like, for example, Azi has a cousin about about 1 hour away from her, and she connected with her like while I was about, you know, in the middle of the filming, because they weren't connected then, because as really the village she is at, she's very isolated in a way. She barely goes out of the village really, and like because she can really communicate really well, and she can read. And a lot of time her Chinese people don't really, because she has a strong accent. So she become very secluded in her village. And so when she got connected to her cousin, she wanted to visit, and I was there. So she asked me to, take her to visit. And I filmed them actually, because her cousin was also a foreign bride, and she's divorced already. And she has, a son, and she has her own story. And so I filmed them, just talked about how they are, now reconnected, talk about each other's life. And the cousin is, quite a character too. I mean, she's spicy in a way, much more spicy than Azi. And she's fearless. I mean, compared to Azi, plays safe. So she stays in the village, her work, she does the farming. But the cousin, she would go all over the place to make money, because she has to raise her son by herself. And she's divorced her husband, and which means, she has to do everything on her own. And her husband, I think, actually has some debt that she has to help pay off. And so she's also, like in some lawsuit with the husband. But she's, she has all kind of resources. She gets online to find help. And so she's much more resourceful, and she's very outspoken for herself. So they were sort of, they chatted, and they were reminiscent of their, youth, their childhood in Vietnam. And they talk about, if the cousin talk about, my next life, I won't come here again. Who wants to live this kind of life? If it wasn't for my son, this is not, nobody can live like me. I mean, look at all kind of job I've done, because she's worked, sort of in kind of like a massage parlor, that kind of job. So, and I decided not to use the scene. It's just because, it's very interesting scene, and it gets you to see more. But because my film is so intimate and so close on Azi and her husband and the family, and it's just to divert into the cousin story. You almost want to know more about the cousin, and I don't have any, other than just that conversation about the cousin. So I decided not to include the scene with the cousin. And so is her. I shot her talk with her sisters actually in Vietnam. They chatted, when they were eating, and talk about the sister's life. But again, because the sister works, in the city, and she works in a lumber factory, and her hands were all rotten. Her skin was, so just always have, like, she always have to put so many medicine on it, because her skin is just affected by the chemicals that they're touching at the lumber factory. And so it's all very interesting and insightful stories there. But again, because I don't see for me, seeing is better than just talking, and that's what imprints for me. And because just they're talking and not seeing her life in the city, or how she works in the city, it didn't imprint enough for me. So I decided not to include those scenes. So yeah, things like that, unfortunately, I couldn't include. But again, that's just my type of filmmaking. Is if I don't see it, it won't imprint for me, then I rather not use it. Yeah.
Thank you, Director Wu. Our next question is for Jennifer. What was your most memorable story when of supporting migrant workers and help them to build a community here in Canada?
That's a good question. So unfortunately, because I don't work on the front line, so I don't work directly with migrant workers. We do have a team that supports our migrant workers. We have frontline staff that does. So I can't necessarily speak to one particular story of any of the workers, nor would I want to, in case I misrepresent anything that actually happens. That being said, in terms of just building that community, I do want to say it's very uplifting every time. So I don't get to do the frontline stuff, but I do get to be part of any of the outreach things that we do. So we do a lot of we pack hamper bags to deliver to different farms, or we connect with the church ministries that then do a lot of celebrations. They have maybe a weekly mass, and then they have a monthly celebration. And so this is a regular occurrence that happens for workers. And through those kind of outreach events, we really see, or I've really seen, how the spirit again of migrant workers is unparalleled. It's so nice to see that when they come out and are able to be themselves and are able to really celebrate with their fellow peers and so these celebrations are actually a mix of workers, but also support agencies, and just the church ministry type of people who volunteer, who are there as volunteers. So everybody is there with their heart, and you can just really see that heart shining through. Workers, support agencies, church volunteers, all of them. You just see the heart shining through. And it was, it, when you strike up conversations with the workers, it's very interesting to see how much they have already connected with the community. And that is why they're there in the first place, because they already feel that connection. So they feel that drive to be able to come out again and have those celebrations together. I think the trickier part, and the part that we don't see so much, is actually the isolated workers, the ones who don't feel that sense of community. And so I think our frontline workers would be able to speak more to those challenging situations. I can speak to the successes that I've seen. We also have the challenging situations for sure. And I don't want to say that those are memorable until we see the light at the end of the tunnel for those kind of situations, and which we do. So we have, like, let's say, abusive situations that workers go through with their employers. We have ways to get them out of that. And so like we connect with government representatives, Service Canada, Integrity Services, employment standards. We can make complaints to the government levels, and we see compensation being made back to the workers for all that they've suffered through. So those are the success stories that we do cherish and that we do like to highlight. So I would say all of that a combination of all of that is what is so special about what I get to do. And I guess all of it is just memorable in my head, just having those, again, human connections with the workers and being able to hear their stories, being able to hear all the happy moments that they have gone through here in Canada. That's what makes this work worthwhile. So it's, yeah, I guess I can't pinpoint it to one thing. I think I just love it all. I don't know if that was way too broad, but that's my truth, I guess.
Thank you, Jennifer. There's another question for you, actually, Jennifer. Just some audience wants to know that how they can be involved in terms of like volunteering for MOSAIC. Do you guys have that kind of opportunity for them?
Absolutely. So if you're wanting to volunteer for MOSAIC as a whole, we do have I don't know how to share our resources here, but we do have a website. It's quite easy to search up. It's mosaicbc for British Columbia.org. So if you just go to that homepage, then you will be able to find a link just for volunteer. We do have our volunteer coordinator. So she is the one who will match volunteers with what they'd like to do all across MOSAIC, because throughout MOSAIC, we not only serve migrant workers, we also serve permanent residents, refugees, international students, refugee claimants, work permit holders, all of that. So if you're interested in volunteering for any of that under the sun, feel free to reach out to the volunteer coordinator. That being said, if you're interested in volunteering specifically with the Migrant Workers Program, you can also reach out to us directly. I'll say it slow so that you can maybe copy this down, but the email that you can reach us directly is migrantworkers with an S at mosaicbc.org. So maybe that can be shared through the Taiwan Film Festival after the event, but absolutely there's many ways that you can volunteer. It can go from being an event assistant and just helping us with all the logistics and really being able to connect with people there, or it can be helping with the outreach and also being able to connect with people there. So lots of opportunities for sure.
Thank you, Jennifer. I guess we have time for maybe one or two more questions. The next question is for Director Wu. Do you already have a next project in mind? And what would it be about?
I am researching and developing my next project, but I did have a project, but because, I was about to start another project, but because of the pandemic, it's sort of on hold. So, but I am interested in the young people in the south of Taiwan in Kaohsiung, because it's a compared to Taipei, it's a more marginalized city, in the country, but it also has its own life, its own characters. So I sort of want to explore the city and the young people, and also actually I was interested in exploring the in that city, there's actually a lot of Philippine and Indonesian migrant workers that's working in the fishing industry. And they spend, months, or they spend their life on the boat, and they could only, come on shore when maybe they got, a day off, but they have to, their room is on the boat. And I sort of want to explore that group of migrant workers too. So that's where my focus is on now.
Thank you. Jennifer has a question, I think.
Yes, thank you, Ian. I just wanted to ask Director Wu, in your projects, do you focus specifically on migrant workers, or do you kind of pick up topics as you see the interest, or not the interest, I guess, so I guess my question would be back to this film currently. Did you meet Aza and then feel that connection with her and decide that you want to follow her life story? Or was your thought process already that you wanted to focus on migrant workers?
I did already want to focus on a family that has a foreign bride. And that's when, I started to want to, but I do want to not just I want to include the whole family. That was my focus. So when I was researching, I meet these Vietnamese women or Indonesian or Thai women, and I go in to meet their families. So I visited more than 20 families in that area, and to know their family members. I had to meet their family members and get a sense of if this is a family that will welcome me to go into, and also if there are stories that's worth me spending the time to film. So yeah, I do have a focus before I found her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. And may I just ask a follow-up? So for your projects, do you always focus on migrant workers then?
No, but I guess, no, it's not. I always, it's just, I guess, I sort of, for my new project, I wanted to also juxtapose the young people in that city, the local young people, and these migrant workers who are probably about the same age. I sort of want to juxtapose the two groups. And I think that will give people some perspectives, about youth, I guess, about, this group of 20-something year olds in the same city, but living quite different life. But there might be something similar. That is what I'm exploring. I think that's a way to, like we talked about, it's a way of communication, right? It's a way of seeing people just as we're all equal, right? Even though they are migrant workers, but we're all the same. And it's like arts, she could be, her relationship with her husband could be anyone, right? She could be a local woman, same relationship with the husband. It just, she happens to be a migrant foreign bride. That's how I see this.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing your next project.
Thank you.
Me too. I actually grew up in Kaohsiung as well, so I will definitely want to watch that film. And then I came from Chisan, so it's a place that fits your criteria, I guess. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay.
So that's it for tonight. Thank you, Director Wu and Jennifer, for joining us, and then also thank you everyone, the audience. We couldn't see you, but I know you guys are there. Thank you guys for joining us, and have a nice, wonderful night.